I don't want to come.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right, we're all set here.
All right, I just logged on, so we should be all set. Your
Okay.
call, Madam President.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Dave's here. All
I'm
right.
going to call a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Monday, August 23rd, 2021 at 7:01 PM in the Aldermanic Chamber, as well as Zoom teleconference. The prayer will be offered by, I think we'll skip that tonight because we don't have a clerk.
President Wilshire, I'm here on Zoom.
Oh, thank you, Allison. The prayer will be offered by Deputy Clerk Allison Waite, and Alderman Karen will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, to join by Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the website for the meeting link and the telephone number.
Thank you.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please indicate if participating via Zoom, state why you are not meeting in person, and whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Would the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
I am present and in the chamber.
Alderman Clee,
I am here and in the chamber.
Alderwoman Kelly, Alderman Dowd,
I'm present and I'm in the chamber.
Alderman Karen,
I am here and in the chamber.
Alderman Clemmons,
I'm here in the chamber.
Alderman Lopez, Alderman Tenza,
Present.
Alderwoman Lou,
Here.
Alderman Jettie, Alderman Schmidt,
Present in the chamber.
Alderman Laws, Alderman Cleaver,
Here via Zoom, and I'm out for health reasons, and I am alone.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
I'm present in the chamber.
and Alderman Wilshire.
I'm here.
All right, you have 10 in attendance and 1 via Zoom.
Thank you very much. At this point, I am going to turn the meeting over to the Chair of the Budget Review Committee, Alderman Dowd.
Evening.
Good evening.
This evening, we have 3 public hearings on 3 pieces of legislation that will also be coming before the Budget Committee later this evening. The first item is R21-158, establishing an expendable trust fund for recreational facilities for east side of Nashua, funded by appropriations and making a supplemental appropriation of $750,000 into the expendable trust fund. Is there anyone here that's going to explain this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Tim Cummings, I'm participating via Zoom,
Okay.
if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. The legislation before you, R21-158, is a piece of legislation that has come about due to the most recent sale of what has been traditionally known as the Renaissance Project. This is the phase 2, which was about $1 million to the city. Of that $1 million, we are seeking to put $750,000 into an account that would be used for recreational purposes. We don't have a project in hand as of right now, but we're looking to set aside that money so it's clearly identifiable. So both the residents in and around that area of the city and others.
Oh,
Everything's on.
Jeff, could you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
I can hear you, yeah.
We can hear you now, Director Cummings.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you heard my explanation. I was just about wrapping up. Should I start over?
We heard most of it, just the end part.
Okay, so just the end part. The $750,000 would be set aside for a recreational project that we don't have identified as of yet. And this was an original tenant or promise that we made, as I understand it, when we first endeavored to redevelop that land, which was a decision made, I would say, about 10 or 15 years ago. And we're just trying to fulfill the original obligation. So that is the genesis behind that piece of legislation.
Okay, are there any questions from any of the aldermen on this legislation? Yes, Alderman Tenza.
Director Cummings, can you tell us, was this, or remind us, was this a requirement of the sale, or is this something that was just the city decided that it would do to supplement the fields that weren't able to be developed over at that project?
It became a requirement. I would not suggest it was in the original legislation or the master development agreement. We've amended that document quite a few times. And one of the last times we amended it so that a recreational field, something for like soccer or something like that, wouldn't necessarily need to be placed on site, but within the the area, so it could be used. So it's just staying true to that original amendment.
Okay, any other questions? Alderman Lou?
Thank you. This $1 million was from the sale of, did you say the Sanders Street?
I did not say Sanders Street. What I said was Renaissance.
Oh, the last parcel. I just wondered because did the developer pay extra for that to include $770,000 toward the recreational facilities? I came on the board after a lot of this had happened, but looking back on it, I noted that was at some point the intention that so in the end, did they pay above market value for that parcel, or is the $1 million fair market value? And we, as the city, is putting $750,000 toward the ballpark or recreation fields. Which of those two is it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
All right, I'll rephrase if I could.
Yes, go ahead.
Was my understanding that at some point in the intention of the master development agreement that the Renaissance Development Group, I know it's not called that, were agreed to contribute toward the recreational facility. Have I got that right?
I believe they were supposed to provide one on site.
Okay. Did we waive that at any point, or did that remain part of the agreement?
We gave them the ability to develop the land without having to provide that on site, with the understanding that the monies that came from the purchase would be used towards a recreational purpose.
Okay. So this is essentially what we had planned?
Yes,
Thank you.
correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing. I will now open up the floor for testimony in favor. There is no one in the audience, so nobody in the chambers. Is there anybody online? See. Mr. T-Boom, are you indicating you'd like to speak?
Yes, I don't see a flag, so I'm not sure how you're supposed to indicate you want to speak. Is there a raise the hand flag?
There's a raise the hand flag.
Okay. All right, so first of all, I sent the budget committee a letter that you should have in your desks or in the email that points out that there's now a spending cap in place.
Your audio.
Audio is mute?
Oh, there you go.
Audio is
back.
on. Would it be nice to point this out during the questioning period? Second of all, it seems to me that the public should comment before the alderman comment. Anyway, you got that memorandum on this, and the spending cap is in place, so the ordinances that apply to the spending cap, to the extent that they don't violate or they conform with state law, requires you to meet LRO 5145E. Any supplemental appropriation needs to state in the resolution the amount that is under the cap or over the cap. I did not see any amount in this resolution stating the amount under the cap and over the cap. That's got to be fixed before you can pass this on to the full board. My second comment is, this is $750,000. It should go to surplus. I don't understand why there's this need to spend this money that hasn't even got a purpose yet. This should stay in, go to be transferred to fund balance and be used to offset the taxes, which are now 3.5% or larger this year. So this should not be appropriated. This should lapse. Some 50,000 should lapse into fund balance. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else would like to give testimony in opposition? Seeing and hearing no one. Once again, testimony in favor? Anyone online with testimony in favor? Again, testimony in opposition. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on R21-158. We'll be addressing this further in the budget meeting.
It's 7:15.
No, that's only the first public hearing.
Wow.
Yeah, 7:15. The next public hearing is on R21-160 relative to the supplemental appropriation of $250,000 into an expendable trust fund established for the Business and Industrial Development Authority. Mr. Cummings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. The legislation before you essentially seeds an account that would be used by the Business Industrial Development Authority over the coming years for future projects. It's something
I do hear you.
Cummings again.
I think we do have an internet problem, though.
Mr. Chair, I'm getting reports everyone online can hear me.
Okay, now we can hear you again.
As it would is a portion of the $1 million that came in from the sale that recently occurred. This is something that I think would be very good for Nashua because it would allow us to work on additional projects with our bidder that we have in place. Thank you.
Okay. Again, are there any questions from the Alderman to Director Cummings? Alderwoman Lou?
Thank you. Director Cummings, what projects do you have in place? I know that you've met twice this year, but I don't know if you're meeting. What projects are being developed? Is it possible to know that?
Is their priority to develop future projects.
Did that answer your question?
I think so, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other alderman? No. There is no one in the chamber for public comment, so I'll open up to the people on Zoom. Testimony in favor? See no one? Testimony in opposition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. T-Boom.
I'm in opposition for the same purpose and the same reason before. Again, this is a supplemental appropriation. This has to meet the requirements of NRO 5145 because you're doing a supplemental appropriation and you're subject to the ordinances related to reporting on the supplement. None of which is stated in this resolution. Second of all, this is the 250,000, which has no purpose yet. Just like the 750,000, the spending craze just continues in the Board of Aldermen. If you pass this should go to fund balance, and part of it should be used to offset taxes, which is going to be over 3.5% this year. You're putting this into projects that have even no project. I mean, it's insane. It's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. T-Boom. Testimony in favor? Anyone online? Testimony in favor? Seeing no one. Again, testimony in opposition? Seeing no one. Close the public hearing on R21-160 at
Hearing closed
7:21.
at 7:20.
Okay. Next item is, for the public hearing, is R21-162, relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year FY 2022 escrows. Mr. Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Griffin, CFO. This particular piece of legislation historically was not a supplemental appropriation, but our legal team and our finance team felt it worthy of, when one reappropriates prior year escrows for a different purpose, a supplemental appropriation is warranted. As you can see from the legislation, the mayor is proposing approximately $5.3 million of unexpended appropriations into various items. As the mayor indicated during the budget process, there really wasn't enough room to properly fund SURF, our Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. It's fortunate that due to maybe a light winter and a few other things coming into our hands, we can put $3 million in SURF. Coupled with the $1 million balance we're projecting, we should be able to, in fiscal 2023, fund the very important pieces of equipment and other things that are funded by SURF. The remaining funds, as we'll see during the budget committee, are for other one-time purposes, to include sharing of matches with American Rescue Plan projects, as well as other expendable trust fund deposits that we know to include the police department, overtime, et cetera. Those funds are broken down into the operating budgets where the appropriations were not spent, and what's referred to as other or multiple departments where, unlike escrows, we're able to fund these projects. The mayor also requested that I send to you the like-for-like escrows that the mayor is able to appropriate. We appropriated about $5.2 million of like-for-likes. Mainly, about half of it is to fund capital projects that are ongoing, very important to the city. And the other, due to the pandemic, there was programming and projects and other initiatives that were not able to be executed during the last year and a half. So those have been appropriated, and the sum total of the appropriations is about $4.95 million. We'll definitely get into it during the budget review, but the first thing the mayor does is he asks me what is our expected revenues that exceed budget. That number is about 5.8 to 6 million. So we will be able to buy down the tax rate as we normally do every year, first meeting in September. There could be other appropriations not spent as we clear up all the books and make the final journal entries, but I'm in complete support of this proposal, having vetted all the projects with the team of directors and other contributors along with the mayor. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any questions from the alderman? Although we'll be getting this in more detail in the budget meeting. Do we have a general question relative to the ordinance? Alderwoman Lou?
Thank you. I just wanted to, if you could just go over for me once more, did you say there's 5.8 million revenue expected above the budgeted revenue for 2021? Is that what you
Griffin?
just said?
Mr. Chairman, John Griffin, CFO, that's correct, Alderwoman Lou. Predominantly, our strategy has been to be very conservative in our estimate of motor vehicle revenues, and once again, we were able to have a healthy surplus over budgeted revenue, which is called out in our most recent Standard & Poor's rating, which we're very proud of. So that's a large part of it, and then there's other revenues that contribute up to the 5.8 million. Thank you.
Could I just ask a follow-up?
Follow-up?
And I'm just trying to understand this process better. So with the escrows, those are appropriated expenses, those are appropriations that came in below our projections, expenses that came in below, right?
That's correct. So we look at the anticipated appropriations not spent in every department. We determine whether they're worthy on a like-for-like basis to move forward. Some don't move forward, others do. And then the difference to fund all these other projects that were not included in the original fiscal 2021 budget, we're able to fund these with a reappropriation and approval of the Board of Aldermen. So the direct answer is these are appropriations that have not been spent. So they were budgeted amounts, haven't been spent.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, again, there's no one in the chamber, any members of the public, so testimony, people online on the Zoom, testimony in favor? Seeing and hearing none. Testimony in opposition.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. T-Boom.
I have a question. Is this surplus money?
Mr. Griffin, is this surplus money?
John Griffin, CFO, to the extent the appropriations have not been spent, they would be considered surplus if they're not redirected to fund other important activities in the city. Thank you.
Okay. Answer your question, Mr. T-Boom?
I didn't hear the answer.
Sorry
Mr.
about
Chairman,
that.
could you repeat a simple yes or no? Is this surplus money?
This is surplus appropriations.
Exactly. Exactly. This money should go directly to fund balance, and part of it used for rainy day money when you really need it, and part of it to offset taxes, which are gonna be over 3.5% this year. Now, the kind of spending is totally out of control with this thing. In the back of this resolution, I'm holding it up, you have it on your desk, you should have it at home, is a table. It's almost illegible. The font must be 0.2 font. I'm not going to spend my 3 minutes trying to analyze this list, but just to give you an idea of the stupidity in this spending. To fund a disc golf, I have no idea what that is, for $30,000. To fund the cost of a school department legal matter. It's a school with plenty of money to take care of the legal problems. $200,000 surplus money. To fund the cost for a cell phone stipend for employees. $7,000. To fund the 2002 Your Voice, Your Choice. No idea what it is. $50,000. And an Elm Street middle school study, which I thought with plenty of bonding, well over 100 million, if I remember right, for the school. And yet here's another $75,000 to do more study. I mean, this is complete waste. This and the other $1 million, it adds to 6.2 million, should all be placed into fund balance. I sent you an email on this question. If this is appropriated,
30 seconds.
serious problem. As far as this 3 minutes, I don't think it's legal to contain public comments for 3 minutes, whoever the clerk is. And that's another problem. But the big problem is this adds up between these 3 resolutions that are subject to this public hearing. That's why there's a public hearing. To get the public to say, we don't want you to start misspending this kind of money. We're talking about $6.2 million.
Time, Mr. Tebow.
Of projects not defined, not allocated, and stupidity like staff.
somebody,
Speak in favor.
Hear you.
Huh,
Now we
I don't know why that is. I'm
All right,
unmuted.
now we can hear
Now
you.
we can hear you.
Okay, I just want to,
Need her name and address?
okay, Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Thank you. I
right.
just want to piggyback off of what Fred T. Boom has said, and there's not many public people out here, but it's been something that has baffled me.
Oh, you've cut out again.
We can hear her through the speakers on our computers. It must be something in this room or the system here.
Through the Zoom.
That doesn't
tool.
help us, though.
No, doesn't help us.
They can hear it.
Unless the CVT
yeah.
can get it into the chamber.
Well,
Oh, there you go, you're back.
okay,
Jeff?
so can you hear?
can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Lori, I also would turn off your camera. It'll take a little less bandwidth. I mean, that helps a little bit.
Okay,
No guarantee, but
okay, my camera's off.
Okay,
All
we
right,
can hear you.
so we're now in testimony in opposition. Please continue.
I'm just pointing out that Fred T. Boom made a comment about this money, that surplus that seems to be divvied up and distributed among a lot of pretty high cost projects. And I don't understand in this city why money isn't returned back to the taxpayers or put into a rainy day fund and looked at differently on distribution. We end up we have a tax increase. I think we understand what's coming next year with the reevaluation and redistribution between commercial and residential properties. And it just, I don't understand it. I know I came from a small town that was only 7,000 or 8,000, but there was so much attention put into returning money to the taxpayer. And in this city, it seems we always have a new project we get to look at to go spend it. I don't understand it. I wish there were more people out here to talk to it, frankly, but there aren't. And, but I think you as a group should be doing a better job about looking at how you distribute this money versus what you put back and give back to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in opposition? Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close the public hearing on R21-162,
That's 7:35.
7:35. Do I have a motion to close the public hearings?
Yes, you do, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion that the August 23rd, 2021 special meeting of the Special Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
The clerk, Alderman O'Brien, votes yes. Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lowe,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
and Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Okay, that's, that's 11 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay. So we are adjourned at 7:36. And we'll take about 1 minute and we'll start the budget meeting. All right, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's August 23rd, 2021. Meeting is being held in the Aldermatic Chamber via in-person and Zoom. And the link can be found on the agenda. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Alderman at Large Ben Clemens.
Here.
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire.
I'm here.
Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien is present. Alderman Jan Schmidt.
I am here.
And that's it, Mr. Chairman. You have, and Chairman Richard Dowd.
Thank you.
Yes, excuse
I
me.
am here.
We have 1, 2,
Five.
3, 4, 5 present.
Okay, Alderman Jettie is on, I believe, on vacation. He's out of town. And I do not see Alderwoman Kelly online. I do see Alderman Cleaver online. But as not being a member of the committee, all votes will be oral rather than roll call because all the members of the Budget Committee are here.
Also in attendance, Mr. Chairman, CFO John Griffin.
And?
I'm the mayor.
And?
Oh, and the mayor, excuse me, Your Honor.
And?
And the Honorable James Sanchez and Alderman Lou.
No?
Thank you. Help me out here, folks.
Alderman Clee. Attorney Bolton.
Boy. Alderman Lou, Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes, I already said Mr. Griffin.
All right.
Hold on, the clerk can only write so fast. Then it looks like scribble. And Corporate Counsel Stephen Bolton. Thank you.
Did you get me?
Okay.
Yes.
You did? Okay, good.
Yep. All right, so the first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment on anything on tonight's agenda? And again, you have 3 minutes. I see no one.
I
think
would,
Mr.
I would,
Tillman-
Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. T-Boom.
I was on mute. Well, first of all, I had commented in the public hearing about these two the surplus resolution of $5.2 million of frivolous spending that should not be allocated to new spending of the most frivolous nature. Also, there are two supplemental appropriations that add to $1 million. The total of these add to 6.2 million, which should go to fund balance, offset taxes. I sent a committee a memorandum
Hear you.
Maybe a recommendation to shut off his video.
That's what we just said, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you can,
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I just turned the video off. There must be a problem with your internet because I have 50 megabits per second of downlink. And 10, 12 megabits per second uplink. So the city's internet's got a problem.
Trying to save money.
Oh, you got the IT department. I think you don't have an IT director anymore, and that's a real problem. Anyway, go on. So I talked about the surplus of 5.2 million. I talked about the $1 million supplemental appropriations, all of which would go to fund balance. Then there's the matter of $77.4 million in grant money that got kicked around. It got added to the budget, I think it was August the 3rd thereabouts, and the budget got adopted. Now there's a resolution to transfer this to a non-lapsing account. That's fine. You can transfer that around. You already adopted it. But the spending cap requires you to keep track of these things. You are reducing the general fund by $77.4 million for this resolution, because you're transferring the money out of there into another account, a non-lapsing account. But the only way to reasonably keep track of the spending cap using NRO 5145E, I mentioned this before, write it down, requires you to list the amount of money above the spending cap or below the spending cap. So the public, if not the Alderman, hopefully all of them keep track of it, but the public ought to keep track of it as well, and I keep track of these things. Finally, I want to talk about this Juneteenth holiday. I'm not going to comment on the wisdom of having another holiday until Martin Luther King Day.
30 seconds.
But it says $45,000 is the impact. The city's payroll is $149 million. Certainly, you let the entire city off for one day, my estimate is closer to $500,000. Now, this resolution this ordinance does not state the amount impact for affiliated personnel, union personnel.
Time's up, Mr. T-Boone.
That should be stated. Before you approve this ordinance, you've got to get the financial act together. This is a budget committee. You got to get the budget stuff together before you pass it to the full board. And the affiliated cost, about $500,000 for this one day, is missing in the analysis. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else that would like to be heard in public comment?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street.
Ms. Orlano?
As far as your agenda with the addition of the new holiday, I understand the importance of the holiday. I'm not belittling it whatsoever, but it is a significant monetary cost to continue, to add the day. And, it seems like we should look at other ways to make reductions if we're going to fund this holiday and add it into a day off for everyone in the city. It's just a very expensive thing to ask the taxpayers to fund. The other issue is if this NRO that Fred points out, which I was not familiar with, 545E, if I have the number correct, because I'm going to look it up, requires us to maintain a list. And under the spending cap, I hope we have that list available and you're looking at it. I do think that a lot of this money that gets moved around should be returned to the taxpayers to keep the impact on the tax rate as low as possible. Like I said before, I think at the other hearing, we just seem to be able to allocate all of this additional money to projects that you feel are important, but I rarely hear the budget committee or the aldermen as a group looking to say, I don't know how often I've heard you say, let's bring this money back and put it in the taxpayer's pocket. It's just something I don't hear spoken often. And I think you need to do it a bit more. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to be heard in public comment? Seeing and hearing no one, I'll close public comment. Communications, I'd like to waive the rules to allow for a piece of communications that was received after the agenda was prepared. Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. To the National Budget Review Committee, copies going to Mayor Donches, National Board of Aldermen, CFO John Griffin, Accounts Manager Rosemary Evans, and City Attorney Steve Bolton. Subject, the cap is back, financial compliance from Mr. Fred S. T. Boom, dated August 23rd, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business?
There is none.
New business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R-21-158, establishing an expendable trust fund for the recreation facilities for the east side of Nashua, funded by the appropriations and making a supplemental appropriation of $750,000 into the expendable trust fund. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion is to recommend final passage of R-21-158. Discussion?
I could talk about that.
Alderwoman Schmidt?
Thank you.
Alderman Schmidt?
The Business and Industrial Development Authority has been working on Renaissance for 12 years, something like that. And it has changed a great deal over time. And thank goodness, because a piece of land that we thought was going to be available is not available. And the piece of land that we were hoping to use for recreation is going for the second build on the Renaissance. So we need a place, and we need to put aside some money for this, for the east side of Nashua, for the kids and the adults to actually use outdoors. And this would be a great addition over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any prospective place for this development?
Director Cummings is here too. There is a state has a neighborhood, as you know, I'm sure you know, lacks park space. You know, there's one little kind of pocket park, but really for that neighborhood, no very satisfactory park or open space. So that's one possibility. Certainly there are others, probably more expensive, involving the acquisition of land, but those are some of the ideas that have been discussed.
Thank you.
Anything additional, Director Cummings, or?
No, Mr. Chair, that's everything I would say.
Okay, as I understand it, since they are not developing a park or field on their property, that if we as a city look to develop a park downstream, we will have this money set aside to fund it. Otherwise, we'll have to come up with the funding somewhere else. And as was stated by the mayor, this portion of town has very little in the way of recreational facilities. Athletic field or park. understand it, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alderwoman Lou?
Thank you. Could, I don't understand how a trust fund differs from is this lapsing? No. A trust fund does not lapse, correct?
Oh, are you talking about the money that,
Correct, that's correct.
yeah,
Okay. I just wondered, is there a benefit to this rather than keeping it in contingency?
is that,
Well,
so-
contingency does lapse.
Oh,
right.
I see.
You know, that's part of the operating budget, and unexpended money just goes to surplus at the end of the year.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing no other questions, motion on the floor is for final passage of R21-158. Would all in favor signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Alderman O'Brien.
Also before us this evening is R-21-159, relative to the transfer of fiscal year 2022 original adopted budget contingency for grants and corresponding offsetting revenue into a non-lapsing grant fund. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
All right, the motion on the floor is for final passage of R21-159. Does anyone like to speak to that again? Just clarify it for people.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. John Griffin, CFO. As you may recall, on July 1st, this board appropriated the $77 million of anticipated grants into a few accounts in the general fund. I mentioned at that time, a little bit clunky how that works, because grants generally, they don't lapse. They're for a specific purpose. They're provided to us by the state and federal governments. So in working with the legal department, we recommend the transfer, not the reduction of the overall appropriations that you've made, but the transfers to non-lapsing accounts. The benefit here is, just like the Human Affairs Committee of this city, when you review the grants, there'll be grants coming before you for the stated purpose, along with the appropriation that we will keep track of through this process. So this would be a good way to move the funds from a lapsing situation into the non-lapsing. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Alderwoman Clee.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not so much a question, I guess it's a question or comment. Just so that I make sure. Or our matching portion of those funds, and when those grants actually do come in. Do I have that correct?
That's correct. If we kept it where it is, the appropriations would lapse. So the beauty of this transfer is you'll be able to use these funds when they come in. You'll accept and appropriate, and you can use them at the appropriate time for your projects.
Thank you. And I just want to make a comment on that. 4 years ago, we were approved for the grant. We're finally being able to kick it off this fall. And I know it's going to go well over a year into another fiscal year. So I do appreciate this. Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderwoman Lou?
Thank you. Do we receive, let's see, I'm sorry. Where would we find annual reports of this type of an account? Of the balances.
Right, there's balances that are tracked when we get the money in. When you folks appropriate the money,
Is it, report annually?
we're working on. For not only the grant. Capital projects funded by debt, a whole host of things to complement the
Or this committee discussed a moment ago. And, yeah, sees again, I guess.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the
Yes, go ahead.
expendable trust funds are included in the budget book annually. And if you recall, not only are the balances included, but also at a certain point in time, let's say March 31st, but also the description of the purpose of the expendable trust fund, as well as the agent to expend, which is a big thing, whether it's an officer of the city like the mayor or the Board of Aldermen. And Alderman Dowd, he plans on visiting me at some point to review a lot of the expendable trust funds that have been created. It literally fills up a page. And so those are the balances for the expendable trust fund. So for example, when the 750 goes into the expendable trust fund that you recommend for final passage, that balance is going to be there and shown annually. Any expenses out of it will reduce the balance, but it will gain some interest. Although small, it will build up a balance with interest as well. So those particular expendable trust funds are funded by appropriations.
Okay,
And there's other expendable trust funds funded by donations. We have less of those, but they serve a very good purpose because they were created by the Board of Aldermen over the last several decades. We have those reports that we can share.
Follow up?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, also, if something's spent out of an expendable trust, does it not have to come back before the Board of Aldermen for a final expenditure?
Mr. Chairman, the critical component of when you've approved then I would approve that. That doesn't have to come back to you folks.
Any other questions?
Wonderful Trust Fund established for the Business and Industrial Development Authority. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend.
Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-21-162, relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year FY 2022 escrows. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R-21-162. Is there anyone that would like to speak to it?
Mr. Chair, I could give you an
Sure.
overview. May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, before we get into the specific escrows, I should say at the beginning, just to address some of the comments made during public comment, what you don't see here is that the tax rate projections that we are doing assume that you will eventually approve a $4 million transfer into tax relief, which is something we do every year. So there's $4 million that will come in a separate resolution, and there's no proposal to appropriate that $4 million or otherwise spend it other than for tax relief. Now, when we get to now looking at these escrows, there are probably 80% plus are in some fairly, of the money that's allocated here within the escrows, are within several categories. First, SURF, that's the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. Now, we budgeted, and what that is money to replace equipment which needs to be replaced and is wearing out. We budgeted nothing, zero, for equipment or Capital Equipment Reserve Fund in the annual budget that we passed a month or so ago. And this is a practice that we have adopted over the last few years. We use surplus that we generate through unexpended appropriations and through surplus revenue to fund SURF. So $3 million here of the 5.2 you see on lines 20 and 21 goes to Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. In other words, the purchase of equipment. Police cars, garbage trucks, and other pieces of equipment that need to be replaced and which appear on the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund schedule, which was passed by you as part of the budget. So over half of it goes to that purpose. Then we have one category, a category that helps us increase revenue. This specifically would be for the Jackson Falls Dam. And that is there is a line 23 is $100,000 to do the interconnection between the dam and the electric system. This is something that Eversource is requiring if we want to make revenue out of that dam, and therefore this will bring in, if we didn't do this, we'd lose a lot more revenue than $100,000. There are a whole group of these that match federal and state grants. There are several of these items match those grants and will get us a payback of 4 or 5 times depending on the type of the grant. There is one that is line, I think 26. I think I'm looking at to fund the cost of the matching funds for the Lock Street grant. That's for expanding sidewalks on Lock Street. French Hill, make the school much more pedestrian, make the school much more pedestrian. $1,000 for a hydroelectric fish ladder grant. Now, this is something that the federal delegation is trying to pass through Congress. And the grant is for approximately $1 million. The fish ladder is something that we are under pressure to build in order to relicense the Mine Falls Dam for hydroelectric generation. So we want to reserve this so that we get the grant. $40,000 to match another potential federal grant that the congressional delegation, specifically Senator Shaheen and Congressman Custer, are seeking to help pay for the upgrade of the Rail Trail East walking path. That again would be, in the vicinity of $1 million, and this would provide the match money for that if we are successful. Now, in terms of those federal grants that seem like they may come through but may not, if they don't, this money just lapses to the surplus next year, won't be spent for anything else unless you were to approve a different approach. Now, there are several. So we've looked at SURF, capital equipment, replacing equipment, the $3 million. We've talked about the $100,000, which is going to enable us to generate revenue off the hydroelectric dam. We've talked about some of the grant matches that you see in here. There are also some safety items. There's $130,000 for the replacement of the garage doors at the barn or the Public Works garage. That's line 4 or 5 if you look carefully. Public Works believes that is a danger to the employees. This garage is 40 plus years old, 45 years old, and the garage doors, which are very heavy, are wearing out, and they're afraid that sometime one or more of them will fall and hit someone, so they really want to replace those. There's another safety item which has to do with the wiring of the traffic boxes, the fiber. That would make sure that those operate correctly, which they're not doing now. So that's another category. And then there's vital, needed, really almost urgent repair category. And that one would include line 11, I believe, $150,000 for the roof at the Stone House in Greeley Park. Now that is wearing out, close to failure. Should have been done probably a long time ago, but those, again, are funds that Public Works did not expend this year, and they want to direct those into making sure that the roof in the at the Stone House doesn't collapse or fall in or fail in some other way. So when you take those categories all together, the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund, in other words, equipment purchase that we need to do every year, the revenue creation line for the dam, all of these grant matching, both state and federal, when you take the safety-related improvements, and when you include then the infrastructure improvement of the roof out at Greeley Park, that takes up 80% or more of the money. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. There is $100,000 for police overtime, which goes into another expendable trust fund, so that if there is any significant big crime or anything like that, murder, where sometimes an extraordinary amount of overtime is required, there is a reserve account that enables the police department, I think with CFO Griffin's approval, to have the available funds to pursue that kind of an investigation. So when you take all those things together, I mean, yes, there are other smaller items, but those account for 80% or more of the money. There are other items which either I or Mr. Cummings or Ms. Kleiner, depending on what the question is, could address, but I think that gives you an overview of the major categories and the major items within the list that you see here.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions? Yes, Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Not really a question, just a comment. I always say when the escrow process comes around, this is just smart budgeting. This is money we've already taken from the taxpayer. So it's money that we've already collected and we're redistributing it to projects that we couldn't do for the prior year with money that we saved you from the prior year for other things that we did do. So this, when they say that this city is well-run, that's a good example of it. We wouldn't have these savings if the city was mismanaged to be able to do these things. So I think this is smart budgeting, and I certainly support it.
Any other comments?
To second Alderman Clemmons, we did just have our AAA bond rating reaffirmed by Standard & Poor's, and they cited strong management practices, for which I give CFO Griffin a lot of credit. That was part of the report, and so I think, you know, we are on strong financial ground, both in terms of our overall approach and in seeking these escrows.
Any other comments? I will say, by the way, we did have a major crime recently in the city, and they'll need that $100,000 sooner than later. If there are no other questions relative to R 21-162,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Alderman Lou?
I have a few questions.
What?
May I?
Sure.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, really. I thought that, why are we earmarking money for disc golf at this point? I know that it was presented and it was decided against, so I don't, but let me just say, how did we save $662,000 in wages, salaries and wages last year? I had a hard time understanding. I know that we did lose a couple of department heads, or division heads, I should say. Department heads. But I'm assuming that that was conservative estimating that resulted in that much savings in wages. Am I correct?
I could at least take a shot at the Department of Public Works group. We budget fairly effectively for snowstorms in the city, which is something that's rarely done, especially in Massachusetts. Snow and ice is usually added to the tax bill the next year. So whenever you see a proposed escrow for a different purpose, in the top part of this group, they're using salaries and wages that they did not have to spend on snow cleanup.
Okay. All right.
The other thing, we had the school district, for example, had some savings in salary and wages. So they returned a rather healthy surplus to the city. As you can see, the first line of the unlikes in the second half of the schedule return a sizable amount to the city for surplus.
And also.
Follow-up question?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I have about 4 questions. Would that be
All right.
okay? Under, line number 26 shows from department hydrants, and I just wondered, is that the street department or the wastewater that?
So I could answer that, Mr. Chairman. The hydrants is the annual bill to Pennachuck Waterworks for the hydrant services. So,
And what department is that paid out of?
Well, it has its own,
yeah,
it has its own budget, doesn't it?
yes, it does. This is a budget that's grouped in with street lighting.
Okay, oh, yeah. I
Generally
remember that.
speaking, we try to be, once again, conservative on the estimate and to have, I believe the number is almost 3 million for hydrants, so coming in at 90,000 savings, appropriations not spent is pretty close. And then we take advantage of that to apply it for something on line 26 that we would like to fund.
Okay, and just a couple of other questions. Sorry. How, I asked this last year and I don't remember, how do we get a surplus in debt service? Is that just?
Well, we try to take debt, which it usually does, saves interest costs or defers some bonding. We generally get surplus.
Oh,
Alderman
defers.
Luke, can you bring your mic closer? It's having a hard time hearing you.
Yes.
So it's, I guess in summary, it's not an exact science, and since I've been here for 11 years, we've never had to come back to the board to ask for more debt service. So it's not an area where you strategically embed an estimated cost. If you've seen Treasurer for Debt's annual or semi-annual presentations, he always overestimates the interest amount and traditionally comes in well under that.
The reason I ask is I thought I remembered asking Treasurer for Debt at one point whether we ever defer payments. And he said every payment includes principal and interest. But that's all right. It's just I'll accept it as a conservative estimate.
Yeah, that's a great quote. One point of clarification is the first payment of any debt that's sold is generally interest only. So a lot of the debt service that you see when you analyze the budget book, the details in the budget book, for those new issues, you're going to see a interest only. Then principal will start to be paid.
Okay, but sometimes we defer interest.
We defer principal, but not the interest. The very first, the bonds we're selling tomorrow, next year, the principal doesn't kick in until fiscal '23, the payments. There is a
Okay, thank
first interest payment, but it's rather detailed, but you can save debt service in a budget if the interest rate for the sale is less than what you projected.
Okay, thank you. On line number 1, the transfer from school to IT, and I'm talking about the unlike request, Board of Aldermen approved, to fund a budgeting and planning software. Don't we have that already? It seems to me we have. Inc., Interware, MHC, Citrix, SHI, Syntec, Alpine, Nitro, Infor, admins.
Is Ms. Kleiner on?
I thought we had a budget and planning software.
Well, is Ms. Kleiner or Mr. Misevich here? I was thinking they were going to be on, but they
Yes.
can explain the
Ms. Kleiner is
detail.
on.
Pardon?
Ms. Kleiner is on. I think she's trying to be recognized.
Oh, maybe she has to be opened
Ms.
up.
Kleiner?
Good evening. The software that you see there located in that line is an additional software that would be purchased to assist with the budgeting and planning. It's through the office of the CFO. It's in the IT budget, as we often are the implementers of the software, and we are working with the office of the CFO, both here and Mr. Donovan at the schools.
Follow up?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say that it was in the budget, but this is an escrow process, so that would not be in the budget, is that correct?
Excuse me, I may have been misunderstood. It's not that it is in the budget, it's an additional budgeting and planning software tool.
And is this just something that is going to complement what we use now? Just trying to look for money we can save.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Griffin?
Maybe you recall, but I'll refresh everybody's memory. Last year, we put a like amount in to fund budgeting and planning software, especially for the school district, which literally was relying on spreadsheets and access databases and so forth and so on. So we invested in what I called a proof of concept, where we contracted with Workday Adaptive. Workday is a large ERP player. Adaptive actually was a standalone budgeting and forecasting company with 300 to 500 clients. We don't have budgeting and planning software. Most of the analysis that the school district does and what I do is Excel spreadsheets. The proof of concept was we developed a situation where we could take our Infor Lawson data that you review and move it into Workday Adaptive to provide the basis of forecasting, planning, et cetera. And the success we had was under the direction of Dan Donovan and Mr. Danielson. They're actually going to be able to produce their budget this coming year. Now, based on that proof of concept, these funds are to program the city side of data to put into the budgeting and planning. And it's a budgeting and planning piece of software that can use what they call Office Connect, the suite of Microsoft Office, such as PowerPoint, presentation type material. It will provide a situation where we can rely more on analysis of budgeting and forecasting than the traditional accounting department that we've relied on. So it's a good thing for the city. We actually, prior to my arrival, we actually bought the Lawson budgeting and planning software, but they were taken over by a larger company called Infor, and we never were able to implement that particular software. So we're looking forward to this year getting us to a point where we can do the budget with this particular software. Now, the beauty of this software is it's cloud-based. You don't need to house it internally on our servers. In addition to that, it's pretty intuitive, so you don't need IT support. So you'll have the financial and budgeting people working with it predominantly, and then we can possibly roll it out to the department heads.
Okay, thank you. The only other, thank you. CFO Griffin.
All set?
So was that enterprise resource planning, by the way, the proof of concept?
Well, the ERP that's what we implemented back in 2012, 2013. This is a module that can integrate with our Lawson information. Enterprise resource planning, I always wanted that term, but that's a holistic approach to accounting, financial analysis, purchasing, payroll, human resources. ERP is that whole suite of software that helps you run the organization more effectively and efficiently.
Well, I was referring to the invoice that we pay in the finance department. Enterprise Resource Planning. Doesn't ring a bell?
That particular invoice doesn't ring a bell, but we did have invoices paid to Workday Adaptive.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All set?
Yeah, I'm all set, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, the motion on the floor is to recommend final passage of R21-162 relative to the reappropriation of fiscal year FY 2022 escrows. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business ordinances?
Before us this evening is 0-21-067, recognizing Juneteenth as a city holiday and revising the holiday section of the unaffiliated employees and personnel policies. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion with Alderwoman Harriet Gathright to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion is to recommend final passage of R21-067.
No, O-21,
Excuse me?
isn't it ordinance -21?
Ordinance, ordinance O21-067. So before we get into it, I had suggested it get referred to budget so that there could be some discussion on potential cost. Personally, I think this is a great holiday, and it's a federal holiday, and this is making it a city holiday, which is fine. And unlike some of the public comment we heard, it is not just going to be granted to everybody in the city. First of all the unions would have to negotiate this particular holiday into their contract. And if they are now allocated 9 holidays that they select out of 12 days, using that as an example, then unless the negotiations give them an extra holiday, there won't be any cost for this holiday, for that union. Right now, we're talking about giving it to the unaffiliated employees, and I don't see that, unless it's part of the legislation, I think it is, who's the other people that's going to get this?
Well, it would affect deputy chiefs on the fire department because they're unaffiliated as well.
No, unaffiliated, but I thought there was a union that was tied to this.
No, only unaffiliated.
Only
Okay.
unaffiliated, yeah.
Mr.
right.
Chair, I could just offer one thing on the cost. So currently, we have 11 holidays, and 9 are designated for unaffiliated. So there's 2 sort of floating ones, sometimes it's the day after Thanksgiving or other things. This increases the number of holidays to 12 for that group of unaffiliated employees. But still with only, now it would be 10 designated. The 9 that are there, plus, 4th of July, et cetera, Christmas, Thanksgiving. If you amended it to say 11 holidays and we have 10 designated, you would not increase costs at all, but you would, I guess, put pressure on us to figure out which other day we would need to not have as a holiday. But that is one approach that you could take.
So the way I see it,
This is for only unaffiliated.
Right.
But you can assume that other employee groups would be seeking to.
So going out on a limb and suggesting that the others would want this in their contract, it doesn't mean we have to give them a paid extra holiday. They get to pick which days they get paid for, because it would also have implications relative to overtime, especially with police and fire. So it wouldn't be in any of the collective bargaining units' contracts unless it's negotiated in. So it could be added to the wording, and they could have, say, 9 out of whatever the list is, and they could decide which ones they want to take, but we wouldn't be giving them an extra paid holiday. And the other approach is if they were willing to give up something in negotiations for that extra holiday, then we'd have to evaluate, or whoever's negotiating would have to evaluate whether it's a cost benefit to the city to do that. So I just wanted to get that on the record here in budget, so when this goes back to the full board, everybody have a good idea of the cost implications of this holiday. The way we're approving right now has no cost implications other than now affiliating. Any questions? Alderman Clements?
Yeah, and that is the way that I understood this as well. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things where we want to make sure, you know, in my opinion, for bringing this forward was to make sure that obviously we're honoring the holiday, but in addition to that, we need to make sure that, at least in my opinion, that we're aligned with the federal holidays as well. So it tackles that which we can't do without legislation. So this is, those are the two major reasons that I brought this forward along with Alderman Gathright and Alderwoman Kelly. So, you know, I think it's a good opportunity for the city to start really celebrating this in the appropriate manner. And I think it aligns us with the federal government as well.
And I don't think it will impact the celebration of that important day either. Any other questions or concerns? Alderwoman Lou?
Would it be a good idea to know what it would cost if the affiliated members of the staff were to receive it?
The hourly rate was that we were trying to compare a cost to. But it would be a significant cost for any union if they got paid for that extra holiday. But that would have to be negotiated in as part of their contract, and it couldn't take effect until they negotiate their next contract. So, for instance,
Unless they did a sidebar, right?
well, we don't have to approve any sidebars, and typically, they don't normally do holidays and things through sidebars that I'm aware of. It's usually something they're trying to correct.
Okay, thank you.
'Cause that would be a significant negotiation through a sidebar. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tabled in committee,
We don't have anything?
general discussion. Anyone? Alderman Laurie Wilshire.
Quickly, they forget you around here. I would like to
You're
take
hiding
the
over there.
opportunity to thank CFO Griffin for the excellent AAA rating. I know that you and your staff work very hard, and I want to take a moment to personally thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was an outstanding report. And it's significant in the rates that we're having to pay for bonds, which is extremely low. And yes, Treasurer Fredette does be very conservative.
Yeah, maybe, Mr. Chair, I could add a little bit of color. We were on the call a couple of weeks ago with a pretty diligent analyst from Standard & Poor's, and as we went through the city's response to the pandemic, choices we made, strategy to make sure we protected the city as best as possible, plans, as the mayor indicated, to buy down the tax rate, put money into the general fund unassigned fund balance. It was a pretty good conversation. There wasn't any materially negative. But the one thing she did ask was the New Hampshire retirement system costs, and she firmly believed we can handle it, but she was just, in her report, as you read, she called out the New Hampshire retirement system burden. And we know that, so.
We're going to have that group before us fairly shortly.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's our home game, right, Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah.
But thank you very much for those words, and really appreciated by not only the direct staff, but everybody else that enables us to have an unmodified opinion for over a decade. CAFR, recognized by the GFOA as a good product. And it all goes together. We have a great team, and our it's actually one of the things we look forward to annually. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other general discussion item? Seeing none. Public comment?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. T-Boom.
yes, well, all I can say. after
Mr.
listening-
Tebow, your name and address, please.
At T-Boom 24 Cheyenne Drive. After the public comment, listening to the debate, all I can say is spend, spend, spend. When it got to the question on these escrows, nobody mentioned the $200,000 for the legal services for the school. Nobody mentioned this golf cart thing, whatever that is, for what, $70,000? That's number one. Number two is if you need fixing anywhere, it's the IT department. Because this internet speed is terrible that you have. I have 56.8 megabit per second download, 11 megabit per second upload. I'm paying just standard Comcast fee. I don't know why you can't have a decent internet. As far as the holiday, if you don't think the unions don't come up, every one of them ask for an additional holiday, if you don't think that's happening, you don't live in the United States of America. Every union is going to come up and ask for an equal holiday, and that's going to cost, for my calculation, $500,000. Because the payroll in the city per year, not counting overtime, not extra time, just the standard payroll, regular, is $142 million. That's right in the 22 budget. So, there's a spending cap. The spending cap is back. You have to start acknowledging the fact that it is. You have to start dealing with LRO 5145E. Start putting in these resolutions, the supplemental appropriations, what the amounts are of the appropriations above and below the cap. I don't want to go back to court all over again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. T-Boom. Anyone else? Public comment?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street.
Zorlano?
Yes, I'd like to talk to you about getting the support of the aldermen to encourage the city or request that the Municipal Records Committee convene to discuss how our city records are stored. This has been a big concern to me when it's come to access to information, and there's been a lot of right-to-know stuff going on. This committee has not convened in over 10 years. I've had a good number of emails with Sue Lovering asking her to work with the mayor, the treasurer, and the assessing department, because those are the individuals that are supposed to be on the committee called out by your statutes. And, she's not willing to do it. And the way this city is set up is every department seems to be in charge of putting their own schedule and records together. IT is a huge issue. And Fred T-Boom mentioned IT. I think you got a lot of work to do in your IT department in upgrading it, but also and having it be responsive to the issues we're seeing, like with emails. And the responses to these right-to-knows are ridiculous. I sent you all a letter and showed you that the city finally released the training material for right-to-know training that was done with city employees. It was only done optionally for those who wanted to attend. And the city fought us tooth and nail, the legal office, claiming it was attorney-client privileged information. And when you see what was released after 2 months, and thank you to, Alderwoman Liu and Commissioner Pappas, because if there hadn't been two people with some courage that could reach out and ask the legal department to provide the information so they could look at it to make a determination, I don't think we would have ever had this released. I was going into court with a lawsuit that was, getting support from my New Hampshire Right to Know Coalition group to push it, to try and see what this information was. And the way the information is written, if you look at it, it's really focused on not providing information to citizens. It's a focused paperwork that shows how to protect the city versus how to share information with citizens that are our public records. And it's very frustrating to me that I still go through this. There's a lawsuit going in soon on failure to get minutes. Took 2 months to
30
get.
seconds.
I mean, we shouldn't have to fight like this, and I would really like members of the board to request the city convene the Municipal Records Committee so that we can have access to our information and we don't have to keep going into court looking for help. And the city legal office, Attorney Bolton, is dumping millions of city dollars on this stuff. And there's no accountability from his office on this. It's a disgrace. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing and hearing none, close public comment. Remarks by Alderman. Okay. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned at 8:43 PM.